Have you ever climbed a 30-foot tree and jumped off and had an epiphany about your life? I'm going to tell you about my experience doing just that. I've got a lot of experience doing ropes course activities, team building activities, and I want to tell you about one that is probably the scariest of those activities, and it took me a long time to be able to master it. It's called the Leap of Faith, and this activity is a 30-foot cedar tree that you climb up. Of course, you're belayed in the back, but you climb up the tree and you stand on a platform at the top with nothing to hold on to around you, and you look forward while you're standing 30 feet in the air, and there's a bell, and you jump out in the air and ring that bell with a stick that's in your hand, knowing that if anything fails, you're probably going to fall to your death. It is designed to terrify you. And the first few times I did this activity, I struggled with it quite a bit. My fear really got the best of me. And of course, working with juveniles, I had a bunch of eyes watching me from below, wondering how I was going to do. And I was at a much more immature time in my life where my ego would get the best of me. And I knew I've got to hit that bell. I've got to prove something to these guys. Well, in trying to prove something to those guys and trying to show that I wasn't scared, what would happen is internally, I was horrified. I couldn't get myself to jump. I kept thinking, what if the facilitator didn't attach everything correctly in the back? What if something goes wrong? And so all these thoughts were there, and I tried to push them out and pretend like they weren't there. And what that meant was I had to stand on that platform longer and eventually jump off at some point in time. Well, after doing this activity a few times and trying to pretend like I wasn't afraid, I decided to try a different approach. I decided I was going to go ahead and let every single negative thought flood into my brain, every doubt, every fear. I was going to picture the worst case scenario while I was up there, and I was going to give myself 60 seconds to do that. But at the end of the 60 seconds, I was going to jump no matter what. Because I rationalized before I got on the pole, I'm definitely going to be jumping for the bell before I come down off this thing. So I can be up here for 30 minutes trying to push these thoughts away, or I can just go ahead and jump and get it over with. So I did exactly that, climbed the pole, got to the top, gave myself 60 seconds to allow myself to be completely terrified for a period of time. And after I figured about 60 seconds had gone away, sure enough, I jumped off the platform, rung the bell, and was lowered down. And that experience helped me to make a connection that I've used in my counseling with my clients and in my own personal life over a series of years. I realized that we often are incongruent with ourselves. That is, we portray something about ourselves that is not true. And I see this a lot of times, for instance, in Southern Christian culture, when someone will say, well, you're supposed to forgive that person, move on. And what happens is people say, well, I've forgiven them, and they move on, and they think that they've actually done that, but really what they've done is they're guilted into pretending to feel a way that they don't really feel. They're not at the place of forgiveness. So what does that do? It leads to bitterness, resentment, hatred. All these feelings are stuffed down just to fester and grow over a period of time, and these things eventually come out. So what I encourage people to do is to allow themselves to sit in those feelings. Acknowledge that they're there. Don't pretend like they're not there. I would argue that forgiving and moving on is really, it can be the opposite of what you're trying to do. It leads to bitterness, hatred, resentment, all of these things that are the opposite of forgiveness. And there are so many ways that we can practice incongruence. We could go to a gathering and put on a smile, and internally we may be struggling with suicide. We're thinking about ending everything. We've got depression. Maybe somebody is pretending like they've got it all together, and inside they're a nervous wreck, anxiety eating away at them. This is called incongruence. When we have these feelings that are going on inside of us and we pretend like they're not there. A lot of times we do that for other people, but I think the worst type of incongruence is when we are incongruent to ourselves, when we tell ourselves that everything is okay. Maybe we're going through grief. We've lost someone that's important to us, and we feel bad because we're angry. Maybe we're angry at God, or maybe we're angry at the person who's deceased. We think, no, I shouldn't feel that way. Maybe you need to give yourself 60 seconds, metaphorically, to be angry with God or to be angry with the person who passed away. I think a lot of times we keep ourselves from working through the emotion that's there, and we stuff these things down, and we never find true healing because we're incongruent. So I want to challenge you to work towards congruence. Stand on top of the platform for 60 seconds and acknowledge the feelings that are there. And after a period of time, then you can jump for your goal.